Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a franchise that has been with me since childhood. Since I was born in the early 2000s, my earliest memories with the series were watching the 2003 show. Though I was like 4, so I don't remember much besides the kick-ass theme song.
1, 2, 3, 4, turtles. Mutant chain reaction. Living underground. Ninjutsu action. It's a shell of a
But what I consider my first real introduction to the series was the 2007 movie, TMNT. Along with getting the DVD for the first live-action movie, which came out in the 1990s. I watched both of these films more than I like to admit, especially the 1990 movie. I'm still a bit conflicted on TMNT 2007, but that's neither here or there. But my love for the series didn't just end with the films. In 2012, Nickelodeon would release their first take on the franchise since buying it out in 2009, named Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, this franchise has a bit of a naming problem. This show was my back in the day. From season 1 up until around the middle of season 4, I watched this show religiously. And if you were to put a gun to my head, I would probably say that this is my favorite iteration of the franchise. Period. Some of that is because of nostalgia, but honestly, I just think the show is overall pretty good. And a perfect entry point for those who want to get into the franchise. And then came Rise of the TMNT. Let me recreate my first reaction to the series.
What? Why? Why?
I thought this show looked dumb, plain and simple. Even though I'll admit at the time I fell out of watching the 2012 show, I still felt befuddled at the series even existing, and in response, I didn't watch it for like 5 years. That was until I started watching some retrospectives of the show on YouTube. And after seeing the trailer for the movie that was coming out on Netflix, I decided to give the series a shot. And...
God. Oh my God. They did it. They pulled through. It's not shit. It's not shit.
You don't know the amount of catharsis I felt watching Rise, disliking the series on the principle that it was different, and then actually coming around to enjoy it. It's not a perfect show by any means, but what it does well, it does really well. And the movie?
Nice.
God, Nick did this series so dirty. Now I know this is a lot of setup, but I think it provides good context for what I was thinking going into Mutant Mayhem. Cause me coming to terms with Rise, that sounds very weird to say to a TV show, it was a pretty good primer for me going into this new iteration. Because I wanted to go into this with an open mind, and not have a repeat situation like I had with Rise. And after seeing the movie twice, it kinda slaps. TMNT Mutant Mayhem is the 5th movie since Viacom bought the TMNT franchise. Yeah, 5 movies in the span of 13 years. And if you want to get technical and count the 2012 and Rise shows, that's 7 TMNT projects. I think it's safe to say that Viacom is milking this franchise for all it's worth. It hasn't gone full Star Wars or Marvel, but that doesn't mean I'm starting to feel a little bit fatigued. And that was one of my biggest worries going into this movie. That was going to be another very repetitive origin story, especially since it looked like it was again leaning very heavily on the 80s series. Now I don't hate the 80s series, it is very important to this franchise, but it just seems like this era of the Turtles always gets the most representation. But thankfully, while Mutant Mayhem does cover similar ground from other iterations, it's the way all of these elements are executed that make it feel very fresh. It may not be the huge shakeup that Rise was, but this film has its share of status quo breaking ideas. But we'll get to those later. First, let's talk about the Turtles themselves. Cause I don't think this film would have worked at all if the chemistry between the brothers wasn't there. The decision to make the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles actually act and sound like teenagers was a genius decision. And apparently that idea came from Seth Rogen, so good on him. From the first minute you see them, you actually believe they're goofy teens instead of college boys trying to act like them. These boys are such a delight that I don't even know where to start. Raph pretty much stole the show for me. This kid is an absolute rage demon. He dreams about carnage in his sleep. He is all about violence and being a tough guy in front of his brothers. But the second hits the fan, he's like, and comes right back down to earth. going to show that behind that veil of rage and hardassery, he really does actually care about his brothers. Leo's another fun one, starting off in a similar position to his 2012 counterpart, being a always play by the rules type of person who heavily objects to the ratchet behavior of his siblings, even snitching on them at one point because he's wrapped by the guilt of lying to his father's face. But the second he gets the hots for April, he starts going into full simp mode and decides to go along with his brother's hijinks. Yeah, by the way, the whole reason why the Turtles want to stop the main villain, Superfly, is that they want to be accepted by society and to be seen as heroes, while also getting some social media clout on the side. Which, now that I think about it, it is very much in line with what a teenager would do. And the message of acceptance goes a bit deeper when Superfly and his mutants coerce the Turtles into hanging out with them, only for the Turtles to realize that they don't have the best intentions, which I could see as an allegory for kids unknowingly getting into toxic relationships. But going back to the Turtles, Donnie and Mikey are pretty standard if I'm going to be honest. But that doesn't mean they aren't entertaining in their own ways. Donnie is still the big brain thinker of the group, but he's nowhere near the huge techno dork that other iterations tend to embody. I don't think he builds a single machine in this entire movie, but I got a feeling he'll slowly become a techno geek in the sequels. As this is an origin story, so the Turtles aren't anywhere near the level they are in other iterations. Cause here, Donnie is still a nerd, but he's also a massive weeaboo. This guy really likes Attack on Titan. He wears a JoJo hoodie, and he has stickers of Jujutsu Kaisen and Sailor Moon on his bow staff. This guy definitely has an anime review channel or some anime blog somewhere. I just know it. And lastly, Mikey is very friendly and open-minded about the world and others, hitting it off immediately with Mondo Gecko, and out of all the Turtles, he's the most optimistic. All of these boys are just precious. And to repeat myself from earlier, this movie and its overall message of acceptance and found family wouldn't have worked if the teenage aspect wasn't believable. Major props to the kids who did their voices. They did a stellar job here. Also, before I move on, I need to talk about Splinter and April. Honestly, I thought both were fine and played their roles in the story well. Splinter in this iteration acts more like a stay-at-home dad, who constantly is worrying about the well-being of his sons, and tries desperately to try to connect with them and keep them in the lair as long as possible. Which I think most parents who watch this film can relate to, as it can be interpreted as an allegory for parents who are desperately afraid of letting their kids go, even when it is clearly time for them to see the world and explore and leave the nest. Also, he's kind of a racist or speciesist towards humans, and it's kind of understandable when you watch his backstory. Also, he says this:
You have some evil flyman create a machine that's gonna destroy the world and kill the only good human, April.
Also, April is black, so that's even more hilariously fucked up. This is gonna be one weird guess who's coming to dinner. Speaking of April, like I said before, she plays her part well. Here, she's very mellow and down to earth, a stark contrast from her Rise days. And she does have a decent mini side arc involving fear of public speaking and puking. Yeah, I won't elaborate on that, you're gonna have to see the movie itself. Despite all that, she just wasn't that major of a standout to me. Cause if I were to make the obvious comparison, yeah, it's no contest which one I love better. Rise April just ticks the right boxes for me. I'm just being honest here. But now it's time to talk about the visual eyegasm that this movie is. Look at it. Look at it! The whole philosophy behind this film was, what if it was made by teenagers? And that also extended to the animation as well. With the help of Mikros Animation, who worked on Captain Underpants and that third SpongeBob movie no one remembers or likes, along with Yasar Kasai, who worked on Spider-Verse and Mitchell's vs. the Machines. Also, this movie's director, Jeff Rowe, was a co-writer and co-director on Mitchell's vs. the Machines. The team took inspiration from the doodles teenagers would make in their notebooks during class, along with subway street art, to create a visual style that I can't even begin to describe the individual things that make it so amazing. So I'm gonna try and do it, I'm sorry. I love how this movie says, what is symmetry? And embraces the asymmetrical. Def the Kid would be frothing at the mouth if he saw this movie. Everything here is so crooked, bent, and twisted. And I mean everything. Even the humans have the most screwed up faces imaginable, and I love it. I love how some objects in the background and foreground don't look like they're 3D models or they're made with geometry, but they're just paintings or painted into the scene. The light rays are just squiggles. Squiggles! Same for the fur and hair. The light sources have this sort of boiling effect. I don't think that's the right term, but that's what it reminds me of. The use of smear frames, accent lines, and playing with frame rates is just magnificent. I think I'm the only one who probably recognizes this, but I like how the turtles look like they take various visual cues from other iterations. Raph has a similar bandana and boxy-like shape similar to Rai's Raph. The shape of Mikey's head looks like his 2007 variant, and his color scheme reminds me of 2003 Mikey with a little bit of Rai's if you squint hard enough. Donnie here wears glasses and headphones just like Donnie has in the Michael Bay movies. And Leo... well, he just looks like Leo, I don't know what to say there. I could go on and on, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. Just watch this video by Graceful Disaster. She does a really good breakdown of the first trailer and why the animation is so good. I'll have a link to it in the description. Her channel and video needs more support. Okay, you now know what time it is. It's time to talk about the things I didn't care for or like. Which isn't a whole lot, it's like 2 or 3 things and they're not even deal breakers, so let's go. Overall, I think Superfly and his mutants were very underutilized. Not Superfly himself. I thought he was a fantastic villain, and Ice Cube nailed it here with his performance. He even gets to swear a few times, which caught me off guard. But everyone besides him doesn't get any real development. And some of these dudes only have like 3 lines. Looking at you, Genghis Frog. Like, come on, you got Hannibal Buress, and you barely use him. Why? If you're gonna fill these movies with celebrities, actually use them. Also pay your animators too while you're at it. The mutants just aren't fleshed out characters, so when the time came for them to portray Superfly, which isn't a spoiler because the trailers didn't hide that, I didn't really feel much of anything because I didn't feel any sort of attachment to these guys. Also, one last thing, like, minor thing. The Turtles, heck, most of the cast drops a lot of pop culture references and name drops a lot of celebrities. It didn't come off as obnoxious to me, as I thought that stuff was mostly spaced out between the natural sounding dialogue, and I expect teens to just talk like this. But I can see some people getting annoyed by the overt name dropping of things like Marvel movies and Attack on Titan, cause even by the end it kinda got a bit old for me. Speaking of the ending, massive spoilers incoming in 3, 2, 1. After defeating the final boss and saving New York City, the Turtles are recognized as heroes by the people, and for the first time in the series' history to my knowledge, the Turtles are able to go out in public in the daytime and not get scrutinized. This is a bold move, cause whenever the Turtles save the world in previous media, they always go back to the sewer and start to hide from society again, going back to the status quo. But here they decide to buck the trend and actually have the Turtles be members of society. And I just think overall that's pretty cool, because it means from here on out, we don't know what is really gonna happen, besides Shredder being in the next movie, which they tease in the post-credit scene. But Jeff Rowe already confirmed he was going to be in the sequel if one got greenlit, and right before the movie came out, Paramount confirmed that a sequel was on the way, and another TV show is in the works. That apparently it's going to act as a bit of a liaison between the first movie and the sequel, which actually reminds me of what the Knuckles TV show is planning on doing for like the Sonic movies, being a bridge between the second one and the upcoming third one. Overall, Mutant Mayhem was just a total blast. I would probably even consider it to be one of the best TMNT movies we've gotten since the series' inception. Before this, I considered the 90s movie to be at the top, and the Rise of the TMNT movie to be a close second place. But with this film, I might actually bump it down to third place. I'm still thinking about it though. But yeah, this is a great movie. Definitely an improvement over the Michael Bay films, and I hope it does well at the box office. I don't want this to become another situation like TMNT 2007, where that movie was a first success, and after that they tried to plan a trilogy, but unfortunately stuff just didn't work out and the studio went under, taking those trilogy plans down with it. I don't want this movie to go down that route, please. So yeah, go watch the movie, and if you did watch it, tell me what you think in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you liked what you saw, and I'll see you next time. Bye.